Welcome today. I'd like to welcome you all here to a talk that I'm going to give about standing out from the crowd, strategic thinking for beginning your career in Canada. And I do want to thank you for joining me today. This won't be a real long talk, but I hope it will give you some good ideas for how you can uh, go about looking for work in Canada. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Stuart Smith. I'm a general manager. I work in the IT field, um, and I manage a company there. I also have 20 years of volunteer work experience with international students. My wife and I love to help international students thrive in Canada. We love to help Canadians and international students become friends. And the title today for the talk I want to give you is standing out from the crowd. When we look, if I go to the campus at Fanshawe back in the good old days when there was people there, the halls were crowded with students, and just like we see here, a crowd of people, it's hard to pick out individuals. But I'm sure that you will agree that there is one person that stands out here. And the trick for us each to figure out is how to be that person that stands out. And of course, you want to stand out in a good way, not in a bad way. There's some real challenges that international students face. One, there's a pressure to find a job versus a long-term career plan. When you graduate from school, you've got a limited amount of time with a postgraduate work permit, and you have plans and dreams and hopes, and there can be a lot of pressure on you. We understand that. The second thing is that the first job out of school is often the hardest to find. This applies whether you're Canadian or an international student, but it's especially the case for international students because in many cases international students don't have any Canadian work experience and they don't have contacts and it's all a new area for them. Another challenge is it can be discouraging to apply for jobs and not get response. Also, how to find openings. You know, we if you read online, you'll see there's lots of job openings, but how do you find them? How do you get noticed? Um, and how do you build a network? These are all questions we're going to talk about today. So let's understand the environment. Because I manage a company, I hire people from time to time, and studies show that the average corporate job opening attracts 250 resumes. And I know that that's true. Certainly, I have posted jobs online in the past. This is previous to COVID, and sometimes you would get 200 job applications. Um, that really kind of gives me a headache just thinking about it. How do you possibly deal with that? You have get job applications from all over the world. How do you know anything about these people? Of those 250 resumes, there's probably only 4 to 6 people that will be interviewed, and only one will get a job offer. So those odds are not real good. Um, and that can be discouraging. I remember a conversation that I had with a student who had applied for 500 jobs and hadn't heard back from any of them. This student was very discouraged, and I understand completely why. But often when students tell me that they've applied for so many jobs and haven't got any response, I will ask them, well, how did you apply? And in most cases, they will say through Indeed or Monster or ZipRecruiter or one of these. And having been on the other side of that of that picture, I know just how hard it is. Um, the next slide I'll show you here is that is that studies show that recruiters take an average of 6 seconds to scan a resume. And basically, they have two piles. One pile is let's look at this further, the other is reject. So you have 6 seconds for the recruiter to make that choice. That's not a lot of time. So for many of those 500 jobs that my student friend asked me about, probably the recruiter never even looked at it, maybe not even for 6 seconds. A lot of these automated sites actually have tools on that tools on them that help weed out resumes for the recruiter. So the recruiter doesn't even look at all of them. And of course, if nobody looks at your resume, it's unlikely you're going to get hired. Um, Another thing that we'll look at here are some of the most common rejects. And this is from a site called Career Builder. You can look it up, find it yourself. When hiring managers reject applications, 84% of them, of those rejected ones, are because they're impersonal applications. It's addressed to who it may be concerned, or to hiring manager, or some such thing. It's impersonal. 57% are rejected because there was no thank you note after the interview. 54% of the rejects say, well, this resume wasn't customized to the position. It was just a cookie cutter resume that was the same as everybody else got. 45% were rejected because there was no cover letter. And 37% were rejected because there's no follow-up with the employer after the interview. So when we see that vast number, we think back to the 250 applicants for one position. There's probably 250 people here in the foreground of this picture, but there's only one who our eye gets drawn to. How can we be that person? So how can we be that person? And so what I'd like to do is go through some helpful tips about how can I find a job in Canada. So this is a very common question. I get them from international student friends all the time. How can I find a job in Canada? And I always respond with a question. Often the best answer to a question is another question. And what I always say, let's suppose you are from Punjab. I'll say, well, in Punjab, what is one of the most common ways of finding a job? Or in China, or Japan, or Korea? I've asked this question of students from so many countries. 100% of them, when we get down to it, is, well, one of the most common ways of finding a job is through people you know. Now, at first glance, this might seem unfair. It seems unfair that you should have to know somebody in order to get a job. And perhaps it is, but there's actually good reasons for this. Speaking as somebody who is an employer and who has hired people over the years, for me, I may be a little different than many employers, but for me, character is king. Because is a person trustworthy? Are they honest? Will they show up on time? Will they stick with the job? Will they do the best work they possibly can? And it's really hard to tell that from a resume. I would say it's impossible. Now, a typical resume, you get a resume, you may have references. For me, references aren't particularly valuable because I know that the applicant isn't going to put a reference on their resume who's going to say bad things about them. So if I happen to know the reference personally and trust the reference, then the reference is valuable because I can say, well, this friend will tell me the truth about what this applicant is like. But if it's a reference I don't know, I know they're going to say good things about the applicant. But if the applicant comes through somebody I know, and this applicant says, "Oh, this student, they're a really good person. They work hard, they're honest, they're generous, they really care about the work that they do." Well, that means more to me because it's somebody I know and trust who's telling me this. And studies show actually that network referrals afford employers much greater hiring success. And from the JobVite recruiting funnel benchmark report, it says that referrals are 5%, 5 times more effective. That's 500% more effective than all other sources of hiring put together. That's pretty convincing. And another report again from the JobVite index is that 46% of employees hired through referral programs stay for 3 years or more, while only 14% of those hired through job boards stay. There's lots of companies out there that have referral programs. They say if you refer somebody to us and we hire them, we will give you a payment, and sometimes it can be thousands of dollars that they will pay. Now sometimes it will be that the person has to get through their probation and be hired permanently, but employers recognize the value of these referrals. Also, the speed that people are hired, referrals are hired 55% faster than those hired through a career site. So those are all some helpful signposts for us to consider as we're looking for how to find a job in Canada. So first strategy is networking. First off, networking should be two-way. A network isn't just getting to know a bunch of people so you can ask them to help you find a job. A network, it goes two ways. How can I provide value to you? How can I give you things that would be helpful? How can I connect you with information and resources that are useful for you? So we need to ask, what value can you offer to your network? It might be that you have people in your network that would like to learn your language or learn about your culture, and you can certainly be helpful there. It could be that you'd like to help them out. One good example. One of our student friends wanted to spend some time with one of our volunteers. And our volunteer invited him to come over and help him clean out his barn. Well, they were able to spend some time together to share an experience, to get to know each other, and that was a great thing, and it helped to build the network. Another thing that you can do is look for a volunteer opportunities. In Canada, we have a very strong volunteer culture, and the volunteer culture, we do things to benefit society, to benefit people around us, and we do that for free. The work that my wife and I do with international students, we do as volunteers. This is not our job. We don't get paid for this. We do it because we love students and we love to help them out. Now, there is many volunteer opportunities available. If you happen to live in London, I can certainly give you lots of places to look there. But volunteer opportunities do a couple of things. One thing, volunteer work looks good on your resume. When you do your resume, you can list volunteer work that you've done. You may not have actual Canadian work experience, but if you have volunteer experience, that counts for something because the employer knows that, hey, this person cares about more than just getting paid. They're happy to help others out. The other thing that volunteer opportunities do is you work with other people. You get to know other people. And you never know. You might run into somebody and they happen to have a friend, a husband, a wife, a neighbor who tells them, "Oh, yeah, we're really looking for a person who knows how to do this particular thing." And that person might say, "Oh, well, I know this young man or young lady. They volunteer at the same place as I volunteer, and they're so helpful, and they work hard. They really do good work. Would you be interested in talking to them?" And through that, you may find that you have opportunities presented to you. I've actually hired somebody who volunteered at the same place I was volunteering for, and shortly after, a need arose at my workplace where I needed somebody like that. Well, I knew this person because I experienced working alongside them as a volunteer, and that fellow has been working for me now almost 3 years in my day job. So volunteer opportunities are a great thing to do. Uh, Next opportunity is to join existing networks. So if you search for business and professional associations in your city, if you're into accounting, look for an association of accountants, or sales and marketing, or IT, or nursing, or whatever it is you do. There's many professional associations, and if you find those associations, send the contact person an email and say, I'm a student, but I was wondering if I could join your association or come to your meetings, because I just like to learn more about how this profession or this type of work is done in Canada. And often people will be receptive to that. They're happy to help you out, and they invite you. And you don't go and say, please give me a job, but you say, I want to learn. And as you learn, as you get to know people, that builds your network. And just like with the volunteer opportunities, you may well find that you have jobs coming out of the woodwork for you. There's also sites such as meetup.com that you can join, and there's various meetup groups for all kinds of interests. And so find a meetup group that is aligned with either your work interests or other interests that you have. It's a great way to get to know people. The next item would be to invest in researching useful people to network with. So we all have available to us now tools that were never available when I was your age, because we have so much online that you can learn about people and say, well, hey, I'd like to learn more about this person. And you could even contact that person. Um, and ask if you could have a 15-minute phone call with them, because you would like to learn more about what it is they do. Um, Next item would be to be proactive. So to be proactive means you don't wait for stuff to happen, you make it happen. So you look for ways to connect with a network. Because if you sit around in your room waiting for a network to come looking uh, to connect with you, you're probably going to find that it is a long, lonely wait. The next item that you should strongly consider if you're in anything in business or professional area, especially, but just about any area, is groom your LinkedIn profile. Another interesting thing that I found out from the JobVite report from 2016 is that at that time, 87% of recruiters use LinkedIn to check candidates, and I know that's true. Just the other day, we have a prospective new customer at the company I manage, and I look after the sales and marketing there as well. I used LinkedIn to go and check out the principals so I could understand a little bit more about them. And I'm not unusual. Lots of people do that. So those were some strategies for networking. The next strategies I'd like to talk about are strategies for developing your resume. It's very interesting to consider that you have an average of 6 seconds that your resume will be read. So it's crucial for you to invest time and effort to make your resume captivate the reader in the first 6 seconds. Because if you don't grab the reader's attention in that first 6 seconds, you're probably going to end up in the reject pile. Whatever school you go to, whether it be college or university, there will be a department there that will have resources that will help you develop your resume. Use them. In most cases, those are free. The other thing you want to do is customize your cover letter for each application. And don't just have a standard cover letter and change the name. Also, invest the time to find the correct name for the hiring manager. You want to adjust the cover letter to the hiring manager, or at least send a CC to the hiring manager. If you're supposed to send it to HR, send it to HR, but carbon copy the hiring manager as well. The other thing is learn as much as you can about the hiring manager. Use LinkedIn, use the company website, use Google search. I want to talk too about some strategies for research. So remember that a job and a career are not the same thing. A job is something you're going to work at and get paid for, and it could be for a short term, for a long term. A career is all the jobs that you have over your whole working life. And so they are different things. They're related, but they're different things. And so you owe it to yourself to learn all that you can about potential employers, because who wants to go and work for an employer whose employees feel that the employer doesn't treat them fairly, doesn't give them good opportunities, doesn't give them safe workplace, all those sorts of things. Again, you have many online resources. Use them. Use Google. Look at the company website. Use the Glassdoor site. Now, keep in mind when you look at Glassdoor and Better Business Bureau, those reviews on there are likely to be weighted to unhappy people. If you happy employees, most of them don't bother going to Glassdoor and saying, "Oh, this is a bad company," or "They didn't treat me fairly." Same thing with Business Bureau, Better Business Bureau, but you can at least get an idea of what's there. I would encourage you, when you find companies that you're interested in, come up with 2 or 3 well thought out questions and contact a manager directly at the company and introduce yourself and ask if they would be willing to give you a 15-minute informational phone interview, because you would like to ask them with these 2 or 3 questions. Now, some people will say, "I'm too busy, I don't have time, I don't do that." But a lot of people will say, "Well, hey, this person has taken the time to learn something about our company, and they've given me the 2 or 3 questions that they want to ask. I don't have to worry that if I give them the interview that they're going to beg me for a job, or take 2 hours of my time." Make sure that you respect, if you asked for a 10-minute phone interview, or 15-minute phone interview rather, at the end of 15 minutes, say, "Okay, I've used my time. Thank you very much." And if the person says, "Oh, well, if you have a few more questions, I'll give you some more time," but respect that time. The next thing I want to do is I want to talk about some follow-up strategies. I want to give you some ideas you might not have thought of before. So remember that hiring managers list no thank you note as the reason for 57% of their rejects and no follow-up for 34. Well, let's make sure we're not part of that 57 or part of that 34. So I would encourage you to always send a thank you email, or better yet, a handwritten note and a thank you card. You can go to a dollar store and buy a $1 card that's a nice looking card, handwrite neatly, address it to the hiring manager, and send it to them. It's very unusual for any of us to get handwritten notes these days, so that will make you stand out from the crowd. The other thing that I encourage you to do, if you've had an interview or if you've had an informational interview, consider buying a $10 Tim's card. Now you can go to the Tim Hortons website online and you can buy an online card. It's just a 2D barcode. Or you can go, if you're sending a physical thank you note, just get a $10 Tim's gift card. $10 Tim's gift card is not big enough to be a bribe, but it's a nice thank you. So in your thank you note, thank the hiring manager for the time they spent with you and tell them that when they enjoy a coffee and a donut, that you hope that they will remember how much you appreciate them. I guarantee you that it will likely be the only time that week that that hiring manager has such a thing happen. They may never have had that happen. That does not guarantee you're going to get a job, but it does guarantee that they're going to remember you. And that's a good thing, especially if you're a good candidate. It's a good thing if they remember you. It's going to make you stand out from the crowd. So I'd just like to wrap up here by going over the highlights about how things you can do to stand out from the crowd. First off, cultivate your network. Second, build a two-way network. Things that you can do for benefit of people as well as they can benefit you. Have the attitude of a learner. So in all your interactions, approach them wanting to learn more. Build a resume capture in 6 seconds. So a resume that's going to capture attention in 6 seconds, and hopefully then they'll look at it longer and go further. Customize your resume for each application. Customize and personalize your cover letter. Use the tool of informational interviews and follow up and give thanks and express gratitude. So I hope that you find these helpful tools to use. I would encourage you to make comments on the video, and we'll try and answer those. You can also connect with us at www.londoninternationalstudents.com. You can connect on Instagram at London_international students. Sorry, London_international_students. And we also have a Facebook group. You can find us by looking for International Students, London, Ontario, Canada. So we are very thankful for each of you who are here in Canada. We need you in Canada. We need you to become productive and fruitful members of the workforce and productive members of society. So we wish you the very best in your job search.